Hey Julie, and anybody else maybe. Yesterday was the day when you were sharing with me about the value you got from the video Juli 2. And then, no, maybe it was 2 days ago now, might have been. Yeah, probably, because last night you said you didn't feel good and you didn't play, so we wouldn't have talked much last night, so it's probably been 2 days now. But then after we chatted online, I got my camera out and then I worked for about an hour trying to work on what I thought could be important practically when it comes to having, especially having people who have been bad to us and have harmed us and have been enemies to us, and then later on we have the resentments and things like that going on with us, and I had a fish oil last night and maybe one today actually. I might have been getting really low on good oils or something because my mind just kept going blank on me and it was really kind of annoying me. And so the first video I did, the first half hour, the last minute and a half were really important and a strong thing, and I can remember what it is. Actually, it has to do with judges and their emotions. But all the rest of it before that, I threw the video out because I just couldn't get started. And what was going on with me was that I'm seeing things that I think could be extremely profound and simple and state them bluntly, except for they're not that easy, particularly to field or to even deal possibly, and how to express it well from my point of view, how to express it well enough to do it is so I was like working towards saying something and then not sure if I could say it, and working on different ideas and getting distracted and looking out the window and everything. And I made a few strong pronouncement kind of points that I think are important. But I also taught myself more about how I think this lesson might go well. And the other half hour of the hour worth of talking that I did, I still have that video. I haven't thrown it out yet. Well, let me try to, in this first little section here, let me try to talk about what the good thing was at the end of my first long stretch of confusion, and try and get that actually cemented in place. And then later on, this might be short. After I get that done, I might stop. We'll see. Never really know. Improvisation style is hard to tell what you can predict. It's hard to predict what's going to happen, what I'll do. And maybe go back and listen to that second video again, and I may edit it, because I'm sure a couple things that I said in there are really important and strong. And on my board, I messed it up too. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Maybe just for a couple seconds, we'll just go after this maybe. This guy here is, his determination is that he's going to have to earn some way to get approval from God, or even to be righteous or whatever. And I know that I'm going to, I apologize a couple times, I'm still talking about God, but I kind of, maybe because the trouble is similar with people, maybe it's valuable enough anyway. But the idea was that most people and their paradigm level view of the world and what they expect is real, and what they need to do, and the trouble they have, they'll try to ascend to greatness in some areas, and they'll also, by having to work for everything in their life, they'll also think they have to work for something with God to get approved. or acceptable or like not punishable. They believe that they're going to keep the rules and do the things and add to the balance sheet until their accounting forces God to give them a spot at the table or whatever. They're going to earn their way. And I'd written there, nothing good works. And it's like trust, you can't earn any of it. And I think this is probably worth bringing out really quickly. Probably one of the most successful things I've ever said as far as getting acclaim for how important it was and how good it was, had to do with the message that when my brother said that I was told Chris that I was the world's expert on righteousness, and that not even Paul could grasp the simplicity of what I said. It was in August of 2013, 5.5 years ago now. And what I talked about was trust, and that when you break trust, it's not your choice whether the trust is returned or not. It's the one who's had the trust, had their trust broken by you. That if they're going to trust you again, then it's going to be because they choose to, and because you have been, for an acceptable period of time at least, not harming the things that would break their trust of you. You're not doing anything that they get hurt by, so they trust you. They can choose to trust you. People don't necessarily trust, and trust isn't really the main point. But it's this kind of an idea that I think is important, because it's what righteousness is. When you've hurt your righteousness by hurting people, then it's not your place to just say, hey, it's no big deal, it's fine, I'm fine, because you can't, because you've hurt them, and your righteousness is broken because of your injury to them. And so for your righteousness to be restored isn't really your choice. You can't just decide that you're going to make everything better just by saying you don't care, shrug your shoulders or whatever. It's their choice whether to count you righteous again. So this is why you go to people to win them, and if you are in the state where it's attributed to Jesus that he was saying that if you're bringing an offering to God and you remember that someone has something against you, that you go to them and make it right with them, and then come back and offer your offering acceptably, because your righteousness is broken when you're in a fight. When you've hurt someone and they are not over it, then your righteousness is broken because the fight is on it. And this is the important thing. It's one of them. Peace and your righteousness and your well-being between you isn't broken unless there's a harm. When there's a harm, then they're broken and they need to be fixed. And so the paradigm idea of moving toward earning your way, like do nice things for them, and say nice things, and eventually you're going to be okay with them because then you've earned your way back to a valuation with them. Their valuation is their choice, and your valuation of them and yourself is your choice. So the futility of trying to earn some return of your well-being in a relationship with someone you've hurt, it's futile because it's not your choice, it's theirs. But we're really going toward talking about when people have hurt you and you can't make peace with them, and what you do for your own sake. And so we'll talk about this judge thing in a minute, and I think it'll really matter. When the other paradigm that I'm comparing to this, ascension, trying to transcend to become righteous and become all that, and that moving toward that, the other paradigm that is opposite that, or is to be compared with that, would be, you can't really see much of it, but like I've shown my line where people's heads are, and they're righteous and they're full and not susceptible to judgment. Then something happens and they drop out and they're in a condemned place, and that condemned place has to do with harms and fights. So the reason that you get rid of the fight is so that you'll both be back to righteous again, ideally. Not everybody's going to forgive the one who hurt them all the way and count them righteous again, but you can. I've done it before. Now, it's important to mention that when you've had trouble with people, there may still be a breaking of I don't know about breaking of peace. It can still be troubling you because in getting over, trying to get through the harm they've done to you, a lot of things will stick with it because you don't get free from them maybe, but it may have to do with that you can't think well of them, and Ron had mentioned, it's hard to speak well of people that don't have the value that makes it easy to do it. So and just saying that people are cool when they're buttheads isn't really necessarily the thing. What we're really looking to do is taking our offense away. And if someone's hurt you and they're gone, like I think you mentioned the way I perceive it. There's quite a few things I was sorting, but I think you're saying that you had an ex-husband who's now deceased. So if the trouble that you've had with them is over because his life's over, you can't have trouble with a guy who's not in the creation anymore to be available for you to have trouble with. So the trouble that you retain concerning that, resentments and and whatever attitudes and judgments and things that you retain, then those aren't real, or I don't know about real. I can't say they're not real exactly, but they're not in a practical reality sense going to be anything that works or does something or is anything, because they're not in our world anymore. Just a moment here. So we can at least say that if we have something that's not fixable like that, like someone who's gone, then we can let everything about that go because none of it matters in any practical reality sense. We have memories and oftentimes bad memories and everything, but the only place that trouble with them is coming when they're gone is within you. So if you have any trouble with how you feel about them and resentments and those kinds of things, then this, what we're going to talk about judgment here, will probably fix it completely. And I'm going to suggest that I believe you can move away from it all the way and be free. And also we'll get to talking about people who are still around and still can contact us and everything. It is certainly true that if we've hurt them because of our selfish, harming ways or whatever, then we need to deal with them for our own sake and for their sake. We really could use to talk with them so that they get over having something against us. If you have an offering to give to God, or if you're trying to live your life in a right way and whatever kind of good thing you're trying to do, get rid of that fight because it still drags you. It's still, you still have to make it right. But then they've hurt you. So let's talk about a judge for a moment. I'm not using my board, so I'm going to wipe it while I'm talking here. One of the main things that we know about a judge, there are good judges, and judges can be fine and can be good and can be righteous and can be completely honorable and all that kind of thing. And the way that they do, one of the things that they have to do in order to maintain that rightness and that well-being is that they cannot let their judgment be affected by how they feel about the judgment. So, if a judge has positive or negative emotions that influence and I want to say manipulate, that's too strong, that affect their judgment, then they're wrong, and they cannot be a good judge, and their judgment is false, because they judge because of how they feel about it. If they think that guy's special and they have good feelings about him, they know him or whatever, and then, this is why judges recuse themselves, because if they have ties with them in any kind of sense, then it's important that they don't be the judge, because their ties can, they can be, I suppose, but they can't be judging by feelings and by their opinions of people and all that kind of stuff. It has to be because this action happened, and this is the harm, and this is the property that's broken, this is the property we're restoring. This is why there's a power that works against you. This is why we're judging, because of this harm that's real. But here's the in case I'm talking about too many things again, which I tend to do, judging cannot be right if emotions are in it. So, when you have been assailed, and maybe repeatedly, by someone, and they've harmed you, and then you're their judge of first resort, I guess you might say. You're the first judge. I was thinking the other day I might have actually write a piece or maybe even a book called First Priest. The idea being that the first one who can restore peace when someone has harmed another is the one who's been harmed, can immediately restore peace if he wants. He can be the first priest to take away the controversy by simply not blaming and returning force. I say returning force, but in practice it's a lot. It's more than just a quick phrase. So when you are going to deal with wrapping up a controversy you have with someone who has been bad, or you've been bad with, and someone who the worst people that we're talking about, abusers or whatever, what we said about judges can help us to understand that when you're going to deal with that, you're going to be dealing as a judge, and the emotions aren't going to matter. The emotions are going to be troublesome, in fact, if not even destructive to your process. It's kind of weird to say it that way, but let's try it actually. So if a judge is judging between two people, and he brings out his judgment, but he's like crying or laughing or something or whatever, he's showing his emotions and his feelings about it during the process of bringing out his judgment, then no one would count the judgment. The verdict that he came to wouldn't matter, because everybody could tell that he wasn't being a proper judge when he made it, so it wouldn't be real. So if we have people who we have reason to judge, who have harmed us, and we have reason to be in controversy and against them, and they've harmed us, but we want the resolution of that so that we can be free from it and not drag it with us any longer as baggage or whatever, then what we need is a judgment. And what we're finding is we're going to need a judgment that doesn't include emotions and doesn't have anything to do with how you feel about it. If you're going to try and justify someone to get out of the controversy with them, which is what I'm going to talk about, what I think you can do, and very well should, if you can. If you're going to get out of that controversy with them, you're going to have to get separated from them, and not this way anymore, but this way. And that's a judgment that does that. So should that judgment have emotions with it? If you say, well, okay, I forgive them, they're not guilty, but man, it sure burns me what they, now that I'm thinking about it again, really, I forgive them, but, it's like some emotions are ruining things. So what is a practical thing that someone might try? Because what you're looking for really is that your emotions will have no further place to hold, and that it'll lose it. Your emotions about how this is, recognizing that you recognize that that's not happening anymore, you're not still being hurt, it's just a resentment from before the past, then you make a judgment and separate that out and separate yourself from them by quitting them. And what I was saying in the other video the other night was like, just say not guilty, I'm not thinking about it, and then just don't even approach it again, don't visit it. Announce to to this guy or whatever, I'm going to make a judgment concerning so and so who's hurt me. They hurt me. But I acquit them, I absolve them, and I hold no, whatever. I mean, however many words it takes or less. I judge them not guilty, and I won't remember it anymore. I won't visit it. So then when in the future, a few days later, if you think of it again, you're like, whoa, the other day I justified so-and-so, uncle whatever. And you think about it, you say, I haven't adjusted it, I haven't gone back, I haven't messed with it, I haven't felt things about it, and, so it's really in place. I actually made that judgment. See, the judgment thing is just words. And it has to be words without emotion to be a good judgment. And we've mentioned that already. I don't need to be too redundant about it. Where do your feelings hold on to and continue to resent and continue to push you to feel bad about them if you have separated yourself out from them and aren't in contact with them and aren't mindful of them? So they'll be justified because you don't hold their harms against them. And it may not be the thing that that's one of the things, like when I'm talking all the time, well, why would I want to do that for them? They hurt me. Well, being responsible for them being punished for it could be a negative for us, I would expect. But if you're going to make sure that they're not worthy of and able to be punished again, that's good for them. But that's not your main benefit. Your main benefit is you get out of the fight. And you're not going to, if someone's abusing you as a child or whatever, and you haven't seen them for 10 years, there's no reason to go, well, I mean, there could be a reason, it just depends. But you don't necessarily have to go find them and then talk to them and open the fight up and then end the fight with them, although that would probably work fine. Picture the court, the gavel. In the other video I mentioned, I grabbed this thing and I said, grab yourself a paper towel roll and a paper cup and attach it to the top, make yourself a gavel, and then when you say not guilty, bang that thing down there and just bust it and destroy it, and just so there's one judgment and it's just going to be this one. And no matter what I feel and think, I'm going to stick with that. And see, the thing is that God decides by what you say. I know it's not your goal necessarily. It wouldn't necessarily be our goal. It would be my goal probably. Like, when I said that I want to justify Patty and Ron so that they're not guilty and punishable because of harming me. I'm of the right kind of mind and heart to value that enough to sacrifice my own well-being in order to make sure that my protection of my well-being doesn't cause them to get forced or punished or whatever later. So I personally appreciate them being free and not guilty and not punishable because of me. So I fully justified them. And the emotional things, or the pain of it all, is kind of over there. It's not really in that. You make the judgment, and that judgment stands. You don't taint it, you don't adjust it, you don't go back. And I really think that if you can really take the people who you've held resentments and even vengeance feelings or whatever, and hatred, those kinds of, all that kind of stuff that can happen from that damage, I think that stuff can all go away if you will speak emotion-free, the right words, not guilty. Not going to think about it. And if it comes back, you want to think about it and feel bad. I say, not guilty. I'm not going to think about it. And eventually that stuff will go away, kind of. But they'll be justified. And see, the thing is, you're justified because you're not in a resentment, controversy. When you're in the controversy, there can be a judge that comes and says whether you or them, either both of you, are right or wrong. It's not to our advantage to be the plaintiff any more than it is to be the defendant when it comes to having peace made again. Because it isn't how good the plaintiff and how good the defending work, it's how good the controversy is removed. So I think you can remove the controversy with them. And I mean, I don't know. Am I going to say that it will just magically transform you and you'll just be shining like a light bulb now because your heart is clean, like, I'm clean and clear because this thing's gone? It could be that way. I really don't know. But it's important to recognize that you are their judge and you can justify them and break the controversy out of your life completely. Or you can be judged to continue to go toward punishment and continue to stay in the controversy and not receive peace for yourself because the fight's still on. And why do we need a fight that doesn't even have punches? You're not even talking to each other anymore. Why would you need to think you need to be in a fight with them? Aerosmith, the past is gone. So I guess that's good, and it's at 23 or 26 minutes, 27 almost. I think I feel better about this one. I hope it's good enough. I'll probably listen to the second one that I didn't throw out yet, and see what kind of monumental things are there. And I may just edit it and share just pieces of it because I said a couple things that were important. I mentioned at the beginning of this is they're powerful enough that you're kind of scared to say them. I think it's very powerful to say, just judge them without emotion and don't allow anything else to come back to revisit that again. Just stop and just not go in there anymore. It seems way too simple to be that powerful, but I really believe it could be that powerful. See, it's good for me. I know that I don't have a fight or a claim against anyone on the planet. I don't want that, I'll remove that as soon as I can get that if something happens. And people aren't harming me and everything, so I'm safe and, in my re-teenager luxury years sitting around, screwing around in my room. No one even messes with me. No one makes me clean it up or whatever. This teenager lifestyle that's just perfect. Teenager really should be done in the 60s, I'm thinking. Because you know what you're doing. You have more skills. But yeah, I really think whether your emotions are repaired by this kind of process, it's not exactly secondary. It's important, but it's not really. It's secondary. It's not the main thing. See, because what you're going to do when you make that judgment of not guilty, you're not going to think about it anymore. You're taking your judge position out of your relation or former relationship with them completely and permanently, because there's no fight left. If you absolve them and justify them, then there's no fight left. There's no place to be a judge, and your judging never needs to come back into it. So when you come to places where you're going to continue to judge again after that verdict's been done, this is the thing about what Christianity does for people and why it's hard for us to get used to the ideas of being justified by God. Because you come back around to the thing that you think is wrong that you do or whatever, you come back around to it again. And there's new emotions and new threats and new pressures to do these things or whatever. but there's a healing and maybe soothing is a good word for it. There's a very helpful peace that comes from being removed or removing yourself from one side of a controversy, because it's all there could be. You know, there's not going to be a lack of peace because you moved out of the lack of peace, because you moved out of the fight. All of the lack of peace and all the lack of well-being and all of the resentments and the memories and all that stuff, it all comes as part of the fight. So if you'll end the fight and take your judge role away permanently, and don't go to pretend that you can now revisit a judge role, because if you go in a position where you begin to behave as if you can reinstate your judge role, you'd have to do it by reinstating controversy, and then it'll be your fault. So, you know, like I mentioned, you know, this is kind of the wrap up. I don't know whether it magically transforms your heart and your emotions completely and frees you from all your memories or whatever. But if something is going to, them saying not guilty, there's no more fight, I'm not going to think about it and revisit it anymore, is going to be enough to at least make that, you know, to at least increase the potential for that, at least. That's a change of subject, so let's not go there. I have a couple more minutes, I guess, before my camera switches to an episode, so I'll think for a second to make sure. I do it 1 minute. One of the things I wrote on my board, if this is interesting, you might want to mention it to me and I'll explain it more. The word endure. I was thinking of that injury, and if you were injured, and the word juror has to do with legal precepts or law force, like jurisdiction, juror, you know, people that are in the legal judgment thing. That's when you're talking about juror, they're in a role in a legal proceeding, typically. So when you're injured, you're brought into a legal proceeding. When they harm you, it brings you into that. But you don't have to stay there. You can leave by justifying and removing your return force concerning the harm that they did to you. And there's no juror anymore. There's no legal proceeding going on anymore because you've stopped it. This is the power of justifying someone.